Okay, this is a video based on the gold rings question, Project Maths Leaving Cert Honours 2011 Sample Paper 1. Just to say, there's 6 parts to this question. It is basically to do with algebra involving simultaneous equations, a little bit on quadratic equations and solving quadratic inequalities. This video is about 13.5 minutes long. Let's assume you have the paper in front of you and we look at the part A of the question. We're given this formula where the carat rating is equal to 24 times the mass of gold in the material divided by the total mass of that material. And the question is, what is the value of the stock? And we're given 2 types of stock, and 9 carat gold and 8 carat gold stock. Firstly, the value of the stock, we're told in the question, is the same as the value of the gold content. So if we could work out how much gold content we could just multiply this by 36, because we're told it's 36 euros per gram. So if we take the formula that we're given in red and we change the subject of it to figure out what the mass of gold is, then we could work out the mass of gold in each of the types of gold that we have, the actual amount of gold. So if we look at the 9 carat gold, according to the formula, it's 9 by the total mass divided by 24, and the 18 carat gold is 18 by 85 divided by 24. And this gives us the amount of gold in the rings. Stick this into the calculator and we see the amount of gold between the 2 types of stock is 118.875 grams. So the value of gold is the grams multiplied by 36, since it's 36 euros per gram. So just put this into the calculator and it gives the answer that the value of gold is about 4,279.50. So the hard part of this question was really getting started, and by changing the subject of the formula given, it became straightforward. Okay, question 5, part B. In this question, we want to make a 21 gram 15 carat gold pendant, and we want to know how much of the 9 carat gold and how much of the 18 carat gold should be used. Now, there's 2 ideas in this here, and it's going to involve simultaneous equations. Now, if we let m subscript 9 be the mass of the 9 carat gold that's used, and m18 be the total mass of the 18 carat stock that is used. The first simple equation is we know the new pendant is 21 grams. So obviously the mass of 9 plus the mass of the 18 carat gold used has to equal 21. For the second equation, we use the formula again in blue on the left here, that using the total mass, that the mass of gold in each must come from the 9 and the 18. So using this formula, we see that 9 times m9 over 24 plus 18 times n18 over 24 is equal to 15 by 21 over 24. And just reducing this formula, we end up with a neater little term, that 3 times the mass of 9 used plus 6 times the mass of the 18 used is equal to 105. And now we have 2 equations. At this stage, it's solving simultaneous equations. If you take the first equation multiplied by minus 3, we get minus 3m9 minus 3m18 is equal to minus 63. And just subtracting these, the m9s are cancelled out, and we end up with 3 times the mass of 18 is equal to 42. 3 goes into 42. 14 times. So the mass of the 18 used is 14 grams. Now we know in total it's 21 grams, so if you take 14 from 21, the mass of the 9 carat gold must be equal to 7 grams. And that's how we do that question. It's all about getting started correctly. Okay, question 5, part C1. In this question, we're told that there's a gold alloy contains copper and silver. In the old stock, the ratio of copper to silver is 1:1. But the jeweler has a stock of pure silver and wants to add it to the mixture. He wants to create an item that is 48 grams, 15 carat gold, but has twice as much copper as silver, or twice as much silver as copper. So how do we work out the amount of copper that this item would have? Well, if we could figure out the amount of gold that the item had, well, then we'd know how much was left for the alloys, and we could think about that then. So the mass of gold in this 48 gram 15 carat gold thing is given again by this blue formula we've been using. So the mass of gold is 15 carat, the total mass is 48, and we divide this by by 24. And just stick this into the calculator, and we see that 30 grams is the mass of gold in this item. So if the total mass of it is 48 grams, well, how much would the mass of the alloys be? So that must be the 48 grams less the 30 grams, which is gold. So 18 grams in total the silver and copper have a mass of. Now it's in a ratio of 2:1 in favour of silver. And if you break 18 in the ratio of 2:1, we get it as 12:6. And therefore 6 grams must be the mass of copper. Okay, question 5, part C2. Now we want to know how many grams of each type of stock should be used in creating this 48 gram 15 karat gold item. Now this question is a little bit like the part B that we did already. It's going to involve simultaneous equations. Now in the first part of this question, in part C1, what we discovered is that there was 6 grams of copper, and therefore there was going to be an extra 6 grams of silver added because we're making the ratio 2:1. So we know that the amount of old stock being used here isn't the total 48 because we've added in 6 of copper. So the old stock being used is 42 grams. And so what we know is the amount of the 9 karat gold plus the amount of the 18 karat gold must total 42 grams, the amount of stock taken from this. And that's the first equation we have. The second equation again involves, like in part B, if we consider the mass of gold being used. So the mass of gold that comes from the 9 carat plus the mass of gold that comes from the 18 carat must be equal to the mass of gold that's in this 15 carat. So using this formula coming from the blue formula here, we just neaten this up. We see that firstly 3 divides in across, and we see again 3 actually goes into 48 as well. So we can break this down further. And just neatening this up, we see that the mass coming from the 9 plus the mass, twice the mass coming from the 18 is equal to 5/16, which is 80. At this stage, this is a junior cert question. Now we have our 2 simultaneous equations. If you take equation 1 from equation 2, we see that the mass of the 9s will be cancelling out. And here we see that the mass of 18 karat gold used is 36 grams. Now in total they add up to 42 grams, so therefore the mass of the 9 karat gold is 42 minus 36, so that's a total of 4 grams. So this question ended up a lot like part B. Okay, let's look at question 5, part D1. This time we're given a bit of information. We're told that the sales of rings, and these particular rings that are 5 gram rings with 14 karat gold, and we know that the sales, normally you could sell 20 rings a month at 200 euros, and every 220 euros you add to that, you'd sell 1 less. We also see that the cost of creating these rings is 135 euros each, plus the cost of gold. And it's asking us to work out the profit. But how we understand profit is profit would be the value of the sales less the cost of the sales. So first, can we work out the value of the sales here? Well, the value of sales would be the price multiplied by the number of sales. Now we're given the price, we know that that's 200 plus 20 times x. So how many sales were there? Well, there would be 20 at 200. And every x you add on, it would be 1 less. So the number of sales is 20 minus x. Now this is the clever part of this question, understanding that part. How much are the costs? Well, the costs, there's 20 minus x is the number of sales. So for each sale, there's a 135 euro cost, and then there's the cost of gold. And the value of gold would be 36 euros per the amount of gold. And this is 14 karat gold with 5 grams divided by 24. So we're using this blue formula again. And just neatening this up, we get the cost would be 240 times 20 minus x. So the profit would be the first answer, the value of sales, take away the cost involved in each of in total. Now we see these have 20 minus x in common in 2 of these terms. So it's 200 minus 240 plus 20, just neating it up. Now you could multiply this out if you want to expand it. It would look like a quadratic equation. or you could leave it in this format. You could maybe even leave it as it was first, it would be fine. But we see that this, the second term here has 20 in common, so we could take out the 20, and it's 20 minus 20 to 20 minus x and x minus 2, and this is the answer. Again, you could multiply it out further, you'd have a quadratic expression. Okay, this is part D of the question. Now find the selling price for which the profit must be greater than 16,000. How would we go about this? Well, firstly, we know that the profit, because it's given as the profit is greater than 1600 from part 1, the profit is 20 into 20 minus x minus 2. Now, if we divide both sides by 20, we see that this is greater than 80. I'm going to multiply out the left-hand side here to give us this quadratic expression, and we'll take 80 from both sides. So just neatening this up, we end up with this negative quadratic first, less than 0. And now we're going to change all the signs, and when you do that, importantly, you change the direction of the inequality as well. So we end up with this statement that x squared minus 22x plus 120 is smaller than or equal to 0. Now to solve this kind of inequality, you could do it graphically, or we could do a little test. So imagine it was equal to 0. So the solutions to this, if it was equal to 0, we'd have the numbers x would be equal to 12 or 10. And really we're wondering, look, is the answer between 12 and 10 or outside of 12 or 10? Now if you drew a graph of this, you would know that the value of the graph is less, because it's a U-shaped graph, than 0 between 12 and 10, not outside. But otherwise you could sub in an x equals 0 value into this, into the original equation, see what happens. So we see that 0 squared minus 22x plus 120, that's equal to 120, and 120 is not less than 0. So 0 now is outside of the 10 to 12 range. So since this doesn't work, it's not outside of the 10, 12. So therefore it must be inside the 10, 12 range. So it means x is between the values 10 and 12. As I said, you could do this from the graph either. So that's how you solve a quadratic inequality. Now the price though, if the price was 10, the price is 200 plus 20x. So at 10 the price would be 200 minus 20 tens, or plus 20 tens, which would be 400. And if x was 12, the price is 200 plus 20 12s, and that's going to be 440 euros. So that's the end of this question. Just write out your answer clearly, I suppose, that the price range that would give you a profit of 1600 euros, the price would have to be between 400 euros and 440. So maybe take your time and review this question then, please. Thank you. That's the end of this question.